Returning to my hometown for my best friend's wedding was a whirlwind. Between being a groomsman, greeting guests, and helping with the setup, I didn't even have time to look at my phone. That evening, just as I finally sat down to grab a bite, a call blasted through from my coworker, Jessica Evans. The second I answered, she was already screaming. "Where the hell have you been? Where's the project file? Why haven't you been answering your phone?" I fought to keep my voice level. "I'm on vacation. I took time off for a wedding back home." That only made her angrier. "I don't care where you are. Can you just drop your work like that? Aren't you supposed to be on call 24/7? I hung up and turned off my phone. Boundaries? Some people just don't get it. One from waking up at 4 a.m. to help Leo pick up his bride to now, nearly 9 at night, I've been spinning like a top all day. Groomsman? No, I was the handyman, the go-to guy for anything and everything. Greeting guests, running interference for the groom during toasts, decorating the reception hall, and even helping clean up the mess after the party went down. The phone in my pocket felt as heavy and useless as a brick. I never had a moment to even touch it. I was exhausted, bone tired, but seeing the grin on my best friend Leo's face, stretching from ear to ear, made it all worth it. Receptions in my small mountain town are the real deal. No frills, all heart. Long wooden tables with benches, food cooked over an open fire pit, smoky and so fragrant you could practically taste the air. I finally found a free moment and collapsed onto a bench, grabbing a fork and zeroing in on a half-eaten platter of barbecue chicken that was getting cold. I was starving. I could have eaten a horse. Just as my fork touched the crispy skin, BZZ, BZZ, the brick in my pocket started vibrating like a desperate alarm. It felt like a summons from the devil himself. My stomach clenched. "Who's calling at this hour?" My Uncle Ben mumbled from beside me, helping clear some plates. I didn't say anything, just pulled out my phone. The name Jessica Evans flashed maniacally on the screen. A prickle of dread ran up my spine. This woman was our team's resident nightmare, the apple of our project manager Mark Thompson's eye. She could turn the smallest issue into a full-blown apocalypse. My gut told me this was not good, but I was officially on vacation. My PTO request was approved and everything. I hesitated for 3 seconds, but the ringing was relentless. The whole table was looking at me. Steeling myself, I hit accept. Before I could even press the phone to my ear, Jessica's shrill voice, already cracking with rage, exploded from the speaker. I didn't even need to turn on speakerphone. "Alex, where the hell have you been?" Her voice was so loud that my uncle, who was sitting next to me, flinched and shot me a bewildered look. I instinctively tried to cover the microphone, but it was too late. "Where's the project file? The final version of the price quote? I've torn your entire desk apart, and it's not there. Why didn't you answer your phone? Do you have any idea how many times I've called?" The questions came like a volley of machine gun fire, one after another without a pause for breath. I could practically picture her pacing furiously at her desk. A hot surge of anger shot through me. I've been running around like a dog all day, hadn't even had a single bite of a real meal, and this is what I get? I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the urge to cuss her out, and kept my voice as steady as I could. "I'm on approved vacation for a wedding. I notified you and Mark ahead of time. It was all cleared through HR. I thought that might appeal to her sense of reason. I was wrong. I don't care where you are. Is a wedding some big deal? Does that mean you can just abandon your work?" Her voice jumped an octave. She was practically screaming now. "This project is due tomorrow. If I can't find that file, are you going to take responsibility? Aren't you supposed to be on call 24/7? Can't you have a shred of professional responsibility? On call 24/7. I repeated the phrase, the blood rushing to my head. The sounds of laughter and chatter around me seemed to fade into the distance. All I could think of were the countless nights I'd spent at the office until midnight, the Slack notifications that blew up my phone on weekends, and Mark's favorite line, "We just count on our best people to do a little more." She really thinks she's royalty, doesn't she? Thinks I sold my soul to the company? "Jessica," my voice turned cold. "I'm on vacation. The file is in the second drawer down on the left side of my desk, inside a blue folder. Find it yourself." "I can't find it. Can't you organize your things with a little logic?" "You." She was still ranting, her voice grating and incessant. I hung up. The world went quiet for a moment. My heart was still pounding in my chest, a frantic drumbeat of pure rage. "What's wrong, Alex? Trouble at work?" Uncle Ben, asked cautiously. I placed my phone face down on the greasy tabletop and forced a smile. It's nothing, Uncle Ben. Just a coworker who's a little stressed. Ah, you city folk. You work too hard. Can't even get any peace during a meal. He shook his head and put a big grilled shrimp on my plate. Eat, eat. The food's getting cold. I stared at the shrimp, but my appetite was completely gone. On call 24/7? Go to hell. My thumb moved to the side of my phone and held down the power button. The screen lit up with the slide to power off prompt. Just then, Jessica's name flashed on the screen again. A relentless ghost. I didn't hesitate. I swiped my thumb across the screen. It went black. Finally. Goddamn. Peace. I tossed the dead phone back on the table and picked up my fork. That little knot of anxiety in my gut was overwhelmed by a tidal wave of exhaustion and disgust. Whatever. To hell with all of them. My uncle pushed the shrimp closer to my side of the plate. Come on, eat up. Nothing's more important than eating. The company will survive without you for a day. I managed a weak smile and nodded. He was right. Who did they think they were? But even as I told myself that the cord that Jessica had yanked so violently inside me refused to go slack, my hand instinctively reached for the now powered-off phone. It felt cold, inert. A feeling I hadn't had in a long time crept over me. A sense of being untethered, of not being in control. It wasn't anxiety, it was unfamiliarity. It dawned on me how deeply conditioned I'd become. Leo stumbled over a bottle of whiskey in his hand and threw a heavy arm around my neck, his breath thick with booze. Alex, what are you spacing out for? Today's my day, man. You gotta celebrate with me. Don't tell me you were thinking of bailing. His grip was so tight I could barely breathe, and that little bit of self-pity vanished instantly. I laughed and shoved him off. Get off me, you drunk. Who's bailing? I just had to deal with a psycho on the phone. Leo let go, squinting at me. Forget about it. Deal with it tomorrow. Tonight, we're not going home sober. You promised me. He refilled my glass to the brim with amber liquid. Looking at his flushed, ecstatic face, I thought back to when we were kids, skipping school, fishing in the creek, getting grounded together. Now here he was, looking sharp in his suit, married. The bitterness from work slowly dissolved, replaced by something much more real. He was right. Screw it. I raised my glass and clinked it hard against his. You're on. Let's do it. The whiskey burned down my throat, but it felt good. After a few more glasses, a warmth spread through my body, and the conversation started to flow. I caught up with old friends I hadn't seen in years. We talked about the old days, about now, complaining about bosses and mortgages. Nobody mentioned work. It felt like we were kids in school uniforms again, running wild without a care in the world. Back then, the biggest worry was unfinished homework. At one point, my hand instinctively went to my pocket for my phone. It was empty. I remembered it was turned off, sitting on the table. When was the last time my phone had been out of my sight for more than an hour? I think it was when I had food poisoning and passed out in the ER. Normally, even when I showered, I'd put it in a waterproof pouch and hang it nearby, terrified of missing a Slack notification or a "you there" from Mark. You there. Those two words were a death sentence. Answering yes always meant trouble. It was either a last-minute project or a demand to clean up someone else's mess. I remember the time I was with my mom at the hospital for her checkup on a Saturday. Mark called and told me to get back to the office immediately to fix a presentation. He said the client wasn't happy with what Jessica had done. I told him I was at the hospital, and he replied, "Can't you find a spot with a laptop? Doesn't the hospital have Wi-Fi?" And the sickest part? At that moment, I actually felt guilty, like I was the one letting everyone down. Looking back now, it was pathetic. And then there was Jessica. She was rumored to be some kind of distant relative of Mark's, and she used that connection to do the sloppiest work imaginable while being a master at passing the buck. Every time something went wrong, she'd flutter her fake eyelashes and say in a sickly sweet voice, "Oh, Mark, I thought I checked that with Alex. He must have forgotten to get back to me." Mark ate it up every single time. He'd turn to me and say, "Alex, we need better communication on the team. Pay attention to the details." Once, I pulled an all-nighter redoing her entire proposal. Her name was the only one on the final presentation. Did I say anything? No. I swallowed it for the paycheck. And now, for turning off my phone at my best friend's wedding, I was being treated like I'd committed a federal crime. What are you thinking about so hard? Leo punched my arm. Drink. You look like you're about to cry. Are you my friend or what? I am, I yelled back, pushing all the crap from my mind and downing another glass. This whiskey was strong. It made my eyes burn. The party started to wind down, and the older folks and kids headed home. But our group of friends wasn't ready to call it a night. We ended up at a local dive bar by the river, drinking beers and shooting the breeze. My phone stayed silent in my pocket, a true brick. Every now and then, a sharp pang of worry would hit me. What if Jessica really couldn't find the file? What if Mark was trying to reach me too? But the thoughts were quickly drowned out by my friend's laughter. Hey, Alex, you're a big shot now, right? Corporate guy. Maybe we can come work for you someday, one of them joked. Corporate drone, you mean? I said with a self-deprecating laugh, swirling the beer in my bottle. White collar, green face, empty wallet, and thinning hair. Ha ha, that's brilliant, they roared. I knew this powered-off phone was like a floodgate. It was holding back the deluge for now, but the water level was rising. The moment I turned it on tomorrow, or the day after. Ugh, I didn't want to think about it. The night sky was beautiful. If only life wasn't filled with so much damn crap. 3 the next afternoon, I was on a bus headed back to the city. My head was still a little fuzzy from last night's beer, but I was in a decent mood. The low-grade anxiety was still there like a pebble in my shoe. I couldn't ignore it, but it wasn't crippling me. Maybe it was fine. Maybe Jessica found the file on her own. Maybe Mark didn't even get involved. Holding on to that sliver of hope, I took a deep breath as the bus pulled into the station and fished out the cold, silent brick from my pocket. I held down the power button. The screen flickered to life, and then it went absolutely insane. A cacophony of dings, chimes, and buzzes erupted, so many I couldn't distinguish one from another. The screen was instantly flooded with notifications. Missed calls, voicemails, text messages, Slack alerts. The sheer number of red badges made my skin crawl. My heart skipped a beat. My hand trembled, and I almost dropped the phone. Shit, what the hell happened? The bus had stopped, and I had to grab my bag and shuffle out with the crowd. My fingers felt numb as I swiped the screen open. The Slack icon had a bright red 99 plus on it that seared my eyes. The first thing that popped up was the main company-wide channel, with hundreds of unread messages. That channel was usually dead quiet, used only for official announcements and dutiful got it replies. What was going on? I opened it and scrolled up furiously. Amidst the chaos of conversation, a few keywords jumped out. Critical error. Person responsible. Serious consequences. My blood ran cold. What the hell was this? I quickly backed out and tapped on our project team's channel. Even more unread messages. The last few were from Mark, sent half an hour ago. At Alex Miller, get to the office ASAP. At channel, all hands meeting in the main conference room in 30 minutes. This data leak is a serious incident, and someone will be held accountable. Data leak? I was on vacation for 2 days, and the company's server got hacked. My hands shaking, I opened my direct messages with Jessica. The last message was a 60-second voice note. Above it was a solid wall of text, starting from right after I turned off my phone. Alex, how dare you hang up on me and turn off your phone? Yesterday, 9:15 p.m. The file is not where you said it was. You lied to me. Yesterday, 9:20 p.m. Mark asked me about it. You were so screwed. Yesterday, 9:30 p.m. I couldn't find the file, so I had to use an old version and modify it. This is all your fault. Yesterday, 10:01 p.m. Oh my God. The data in the old version was wrong. The client is furious. Today, 9:47 a.m. Did you leave confidential files lying around for someone else to see? People are saying our quote was leaked. Today, 10:30 a.m. Alex, you've ruined me. Mark says this is a huge deal. Today, 11:50 a.m. You need to get back here right now and explain this to Mark. It's all your fault. Today, 12:20 p.m. I stood frozen at the chaotic bus station exit, feeling the blood drain from my face, only to rush back up and pound in my temples. I was furious. My hands were ice cold, but my fingertips were burning. I turn off my phone for one goddamn wedding, and I come back to being the prime suspect in a corporate espionage case. That idiot, Jessica, she couldn't find a file, used the wrong data, screwed up big time, and her first instinct is to pin the whole thing on me, and she invented a data leak to cover her own ass? My finger trembled as I pressed play on the 60-second voice note. Jessica's voice, shrill and frantic and laced with fake tears, shot into my ear like an ice pick. Alex, when are you getting back? This quote leak is a disaster. It's all your fault for turning off your phone when you did. If you had just been reachable, I wouldn't have had to use the wrong file. You have to come back and tell Mark what happened. Just say you were careless with the file, and someone who wasn't supposed to see it might have gotten a look at it. This has nothing to do with me. Do you hear me? You have to. I stopped it before it could finish. A wave of nausea churned in my stomach. She wasn't just passing the buck. She was trying to get me to be her fall guy, to make me take the blame for a leak that she probably invented. My vision blurred with rage. I stood there, gasping for air, the bustling station fading into a dull roar around me. My mind was a tangled mess. My first instinct was to call Mark, but my thumb hovered over the screen. I stopped. What'd I even say? That I told her exactly where the file was? That she was too incompetent to find it? Would he even believe me? In his eyes, Jessica was one of his people. Besides, this data leak accusation was serious. What if? My phone buzzed again, lighting up the screen. It was Mark. He was calling me. I stared at his name flashing on the screen. It looked like a coiled snake, ready to strike. To answer or not to answer. The station announcements were blaring, but the only thing I could hear was the frantic thumping of my own heart. Right before it went to voicemail, I gritted my teeth and swiped to answer. Hello, Mark. I tried to make my voice sound normal. There was a 2-second pause. Then Mark's voice, low and devoid of any emotion, came through the line. Alex, you finally turned your phone on. Must have been a pretty great vacation, huh? Every word was a shard of ice, stabbing in my eardrums. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. The noise of the bus station blurred into a meaningless hum. Mark, I just got off the bus. My phone just powered on, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. What's this about a data leak? What happened? What happened? Mark scoffed on the other end, and the sound made my blood boil. You're asking me? Alex, I should be asking you. Before you left, how exactly were you storing your files? Did you just leave them out for anyone to see? He went straight for the accusation. It was my fault. Period. My jaw was so tight it ached. Mark, the final price quote was in the second drawer down on the left side of my desk, inside a blue folder. I confirmed it was secure before I left. The day before my vacation started, I sent an email to the project team with the file's location and attached the digital version, and I also sent a separate text to Jessica. I spoke slowly, enunciating every word. The line was silent for a few seconds. That's useless now. Mark's voice suddenly boomed, laced with irritation. The fact is, the project is in trouble. The client is using the price discrepancy to question our security and accuse us of leaking confidential data. The damage is severe because you were unreachable. Jessica couldn't find the file, so she used an old version to send to the client, and the numbers didn't match. That's what gave them an opening to claim there was a leak. Alex, you're a senior member of this team. Don't you have any sense of responsibility? You can't just drop everything because you're on vacation. You knew this project was at a critical stage. The accusations rained down on me, one after another. That word again, responsibility. I almost laughed out loud. It was always the same playbook. Project, responsibility, team. The moment you try to defend yourself, you're the one who lacks commitment. Mark, I interrupted, my voice turning icy. My vacation was approved through the proper channels. My work was handed off clearly. Jessica's inability to find a file is her problem. Her decision to use the wrong file was her mistake. This has nothing to do with whether my phone was on or off, or with my sense of responsibility. What's that supposed to mean? Mark was furious now. Are you trying to shift the blame? Get back here. Now. We're having a meeting in the office immediately. He hung up before I could say another word. Click. The dial tone was jarring. I stood there, seething. Shifting the blame? Who was really shifting the blame here? In an immediate meeting? It sounded more like an inquisition. Fueled by a fresh surge of adrenaline, I dragged my suitcase to the curb and hailed a cab straight to the office. The whole way there, my face was a thundercloud. The driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, but didn't dare say a word. The blast of the office building's AC felt like a cold slap. It wasn't refreshing, it was nauseating. The receptionist saw me. Her eyes darted away, and she quickly busied herself with some papers on her desk. Usually, she'd give me a nod and a smile. The atmosphere was definitely off. I reached the glass door to our department and took a deep breath before pushing it open. Swish! In an instant, every head in the office snapped in my direction. Their expressions were a mix of curiosity, morbid fascination, schadenfreude, and a little bit of pity. Jessica was at her desk, her eyes puffy and red. She was dabbing at her nose with a tissue, putting on a masterclass performance of the victim. The moment she saw me, her head dropped, her shoulders started to shake gently. The drama was thick. Two of her work friends were huddled around her, whispering words of comfort. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," a snide voice piped up. It was Mike, the office gossip who sat across from Jessica and lived for this kind of drama. I ignored him, my eyes fixed on the glass walls of Mark's office. Mark saw me, too. He beckoned me over with a stern look on his face. I didn't go immediately. I walked to my desk and set my suitcase down. My desk looked the same, but the lock on my second drawer on the left, it was bent as if it had been forced open. My stomach dropped. They actually pried open my desk? "Alex," Mark couldn't wait. He came out of his office and stood at the doorway. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried across the silent office. "In here. We've been waiting for you." His eyes swept over me, full of pressure. Jessica let out another perfectly timed sob. I clenched my fists, then relaxed them. I followed Mark into his office. Two other people were already there: Dave, a veteran on our team who mostly kept to himself, and someone from HR, probably to take minutes. Mark sat at the head of the small table and pointed to the empty chair across from him. I sat down. "All right, everyone's here," Mark began, tapping the table. "This incident is extremely serious. The client has filed a formal complaint with upper management. They're saying our internal controls are a mess and that confidential pricing data was leaked. The fallout is disastrous." His gaze was like a knife, trying to skin me alive. "Alex, during your vacation, you were unreachable. As a result, Jessica was unable to locate the correct file and had to use an outdated version, causing significant financial and reputational risk to the company. Do you have an explanation?" He'd already passed judgment. Jessica, head down, whimpered, "Mark, I'm so sorry. It's all my fault. I was just so panicked I couldn't find the file, and Alex's phone was off. I was just trying to not miss the deadline. Jessica was trying to do the right thing." Mark cut her off, his protective tone obvious. She was acting in the project's best interest. Her methods might have been imperfect, but her intentions were good. Unlike some people, who completely disappear the second they go on vacation, showing no sense of responsibility. I watched their little performance, and any last shred of doubt in my mind vanished. "Mark," I looked up, meeting his eyes directly. My voice was so calm it surprised even me. "First, my vacation was fully approved. Second, my work was properly handed off. I sent an email with the file's location to the project group, with you and Jessica CC'd, on Thursday at 3:27 p.m. At the same time, I sent Jessica a direct message on her personal phone, explicitly stating the file was in the second drawer down on the left in the blue folder. I took out my phone, opened the text thread with Jessica, and turned the screen toward Mark. The words were there in black and white, timestamp and all. Mark's expression flickered. He leaned forward, squinting at the screen. Jessica's sobbing stopped abruptly. She looked up, her face draining of all color. "Third," I continued, ignoring them, my voice rising slightly. "Jessica's failure to find the file is her own issue. Her decision to use the wrong file was her professional error. And fourth, this data leak is, as of now, a baseless accusation stemming from her mistake with the data. You can't pin that on me." I finished, and the office fell into a dead silence. Dave stared at me, astonished. The HR person was scribbling furiously. Mark's face went from pale to red and back again. He avoided looking at my phone, clearly cornered. Jessica panicked, her voice becoming shrill. I might not have seen that message. I was busy, and I looked. There was no blue folder. Was my drawer lock pried open? I looked at her coldly. Who did it? Did you find what you were looking for after you broke in? My question made her choke on her words. She stammered. I couldn't find the key, and I was in a hurry, so you pried open my personal desk drawer? I stared her down. And did you find what you needed? Her face was as white as a sheet. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. It was obvious she had broken in, probably hadn't even looked properly, or had already sent the wrong file, and was just looking for a way to blame me. That's enough. Mark slammed his hand on the table, trying to regain control. Alex, even if you sent a message, your colleague couldn't find it. Don't you have any responsibility for that? Couldn't you have sent a follow-up? Couldn't you have made sure she received it? Now that there's a problem, all you can do is deflect and blame others. I looked at him. Even now, he was determined to protect Jessica and force the blame onto me. Blame others? To hell with that. The rage that had been simmering all day finally boiled over. Mark, I said, looking right at him, my voice flat and sharp. My job is to be an employee, not a babysitter. My responsibility was to complete my work, hand it off clearly, and provide the correct information. It is not my responsibility to make sure Jessica can read English or is capable of finding a folder in a drawer. And the mess she made is definitely not my responsibility. I'm not taking the fall for this. When I finished, you could hear the air conditioning humming. Mark stared at me as if he'd never seen me before. Jessica sat with her mouth open, having forgotten to cry. Dave had his head down, but I could have sworn I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. I knew what I'd just done. I had just burned the bridge. But damn, it felt good. Mark didn't say another word. He just shot me a look of pure venom, grumbled, "Meeting's over," and stormed out of the office, slamming the door behind him. Jessica, her eyes red, was immediately swarmed by her clique of friends, who whispered consoling words as they escorted her out. None of them so much as glanced in my direction as they passed my desk. Dave was the last to leave. As he gathered his things, he shot me a quick, complicated look, a mix of admiration and "you're in deep trouble now." He opened his mouth as if to say something, but closed it, let out a small sigh, and left. I sat at my desk, staring at the prime marks on my drawer lock. The fire in my chest had subsided, replaced by a cold clarity. I knew this was it. Not that my career was over, but any semblance of peace between me, Mark, and Jessica was completely gone. The next few days proved it. Mark stopped giving me assignments in person. Everything came through formal emails, cold and bureaucratic. Before, he'd at least walk over, clap me on the shoulder, and offer a phony great work. Now, he wouldn't even make eye contact. Jessica treated me like I was invisible. If she needed something for work, she'd send a curt message on Slack with not one extra word. If we passed each other by the coffee machine, she'd immediately turn her head or pretend to be fascinated by something on her phone, a sneer plastered on her face as if she'd just smelled something foul. Her little posse followed her lead. They stopped asking me to lunch. Their conversations would die down the moment I got close. It was classic, childish office shunning. But I had to admit, in the suffocating environment of small office, it was effective. The atmosphere could crush you. I started bringing my lunch from home or eating alone at a cafe downstairs. It was quiet, but it was also lonely. Most of my other coworkers kept their distance, wanting to stay neutral. A few would give me a sympathetic glance, but that was it. No one was brave enough to be seen as being on my side. I got it. Everyone was just trying to keep their job. A few days later, Mark called me into his office. It wasn't to apologize. It was to dump a new project on me. A total train wreck. The previous lead had messed up so badly he'd been transferred, leaving behind a mountain of bad data and an army of angry clients. Mark's pitch was dripping with false sincerity. "Alex, you're a capable guy. About what happened last week. While you had your part to play, the company is still willing to give you a chance. If you could take over this project and turn it around, it would be a great way to show everyone your commitment." I looked at his smarmy face and felt a surge of nausea. Give me a chance? He was handing me a grenade with the pin pulled. If I succeeded, he'd take the credit. If I failed, he'd have the perfect excuse to finally get rid of me, citing both the old and new failures. "Mark, I still have to wrap up the X and Y projects. The deadlines are tight, and I don't think I have the bandwidth to take on such an important new assignment," I said, my refusal firm. "Besides, I've never worked on that account before. If I jump in cold and something else goes wrong, I'd be even more of a liability." The smile on Mark's face froze. His eyes went cold. "Alex, are you cherry-picking your assignments now? Is this your attitude when the team needs you to step up?" "Mark, I'm being responsible to the project," I said, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I have limited capacity. Spreading myself too thin is a recipe for disaster." I assume you don't want another project to blow up, do you? He stared at me for a long moment, then waved a hand with a fake, tight-lipped smile. Fine, you can go. I knew it wasn't over. Sure enough, within a couple of days, rumors started circulating that I was arrogant, insubordinate, difficult to work with. Some even whispered that I was planning to quit anyway, so I was sabotaging projects on my way out. It wasn't hard to guess where that was coming from. Jessica wasn't sitting idle, either. Since her data leak accusation had failed, she'd switched to death by 1,000 cuts. For instance, she needed an old file from months ago that was easily accessible on a shared drive. But she messaged me anyway. Alex, where did you put that XX file? I remember you were the one who organized it. I sent her the link to the drive. A few minutes later, she replied, Are you sure this is the right version? I remember it differently. I wrote back, That's the version on the server. If you have an updated one, please feel free to share it with me. Silence. This petty harassment happened constantly. It was like being swarmed by mosquitoes. They don't bite hard, but they drive you insane. I did my best to ignore it, but the frustration was building up, coiling in my gut. Then, on Friday afternoon, just before the end of the day, I went to the copy room to make some printouts. Dave was in there, too. It was just the two of us. He was slowly collating his papers, glancing nervously at the door. Suddenly, he leaned in and spoke in a rushed whisper. That day in the meeting, you were right. I paused, looking at him. Dave seemed anxious. He pushed his glasses up his nose, his voice even lower. Jessica, she wasn't having trouble finding the file. She was bragging to some of the others later. Said she was too lazy to look for it properly, and figured she could just change a few numbers in the old version and no one would notice. But the client was detail-oriented and it blew up in her face. My heart hammered against my ribs. I stared at Dave. He wouldn't meet my eyes, his words coming out in a torrent. She said Mark knew she was using the old version. He didn't care at first, but when a client raised hell, he started scrambling for a scapegoat. He finished and immediately tried to leave. Dave, I said, stopping him. He froze, looking back at me, a flash of panic in his eyes. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. Dave gave a bitter smile and shook his head, his voice strained. Don't thank me. I couldn't stand it. You should. Watch your back. He paused, as if wrestling with himself, then added one more thing in a rush. Before she even tried to call you, I think Mark knew the file would be a pain to find. I overheard him tell her to just call Alex and make him find it. With that, he practically bolted from the room. The only sound left was the low hum of the copier. I stood there, feeling the blood rush to my head and then drain away, leaving me cold. Mark knew. He might have known from the start that Jessica would be too lazy to find it. Or maybe he just didn't want to be bothered with helping her himself. So he sicked her on me during my vacation. Or worse, maybe he'd been looking for an excuse to put me in my place all along. Dave's words were like a bomb going off in my head, leaving a ringing in my ears. Mark knew from the beginning. A chill crawled up my spine, colder and more visceral than anything Jessica's backstabbing had made me feel. This wasn't incompetence. This was malice. This was the man in charge, holding my livelihood in his hands, smiling as he pushed me toward a cliff. I sat at my desk, staring at my monitor, unable to read a single word. My fingertips were numb. Anger. A cold, sharp anger began to burn through the chill in my veins. All right, if that's how they wanted to play, then I was ready to flip the whole damn table. For the next few days, I was unusually quiet. I did my work. I ate my lunch. I completely ignored Jessica's petty provocations and kept a wide berth for Mark. They probably thought I'd been beaten into submission. I could even see a flicker of smug satisfaction on Jessica's face. I was waiting, biding my time, and then the opportunity came. A vice president from corporate, Mr. Davis, came to visit our branch. The rumor was that he was a no-nonsense, results-oriented guy, here to review project progress. Mark was practically glued to his side, sweating through his shirt as he gave the grand tour. During a meeting, Mr. Davis made an impromptu request. He wanted a status update on all core projects from the team leaders. Mark was clearly unprepared. He started scrambling, telling people to pull up presentations and find the latest reports. I knew this was my moment. The atmosphere in the conference room was tense. Mr. Davis sat at the head of the table, listening as Mark droned on, reciting from a script. When Mark got to the project that had caused all the trouble, he was deliberately vague, trying to gloss over the minor data discrepancy and move on. And so, after some quick work by the team, the issue has been resolved, and we are implementing stronger review protocols moving forward. Mark said, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead. Mr. Davis nodded, seeming to accept it. It looked like the moment was about to pass. I cleared my throat and raised my hand. Every head in the room turned to me. I saw Mark's eyes flash with warning, telling me to stay quiet. Mr. Davis looked at me. And you are? Mr. Davis, my name is Alex Miller from the project team, I said, standing up. My voice was steady. Regarding the project Mark was just discussing, I believe some additional context is necessary. Mark's face went pale. Alex, this isn't the time. Let him speak. Mr. Davis cut him off, his gaze sharp and focused on me. What context? I took a breath and mirrored my phone to the main screen, pulling up my text history with Jessica. First, regarding the price quote file. Before I went on approved vacation, I clearly communicated the file's location to my colleague, Jessica Evans, via both a team-wide email and a direct text message. The screenshot of the text, with its timestamp, was displayed for everyone to see. Jessica's face went white. Second, during my vacation, Ms. Evans failed to locate the file due to her own reasons and proceeded to use an incorrect, outdated version, which caused the client's complaint. Afterward, her primary focus was not on fixing the mistake, but on attempting to shift the blame for data leakage and professional negligence onto me. I hit play on the 60-second voice note. Jessica's shrill, panicked voice filled the silent conference room. Alex, when are you getting back? This quote leak is a disaster. It's all your fault for turning off your phone. You have to come back and tell Mark what happened. Just say you were careless with the file, and someone who wasn't supposed to see it might have gotten a look at it. This has nothing to do with me. When the recording ended, you could have heard a pin drop. Jessica looked like a fish out of water, her mouth hanging open. Mark's jaw was clenched, a vein throbbing in his temple. Alex, you're recording private conversations? This is... Mark, I turned to him, my voice hard as steel. If it weren't for this recording, I'd likely have been fired by now under suspicion of leaking confidential data, wouldn't I? Furthermore, my understanding is that Ms. Evans didn't fail to find the file. She was overheard admitting to other colleagues that she was too lazy to look properly and thought she could get away with using the old version. This can be verified. I didn't look at Dave, but I saw him duck his head out of the corner of my eye. Mark's face was ashen. That's a lie. You're making things up. We can ask the other team members to confirm, I said, not backing down an inch. But more importantly, let's talk about you, Mark. I locked my eyes on him. Before Jessica even contacted me, were you already aware that the file might be difficult to locate? Did you, in fact, tell her to just call Alex and make him find it? And after her mistake caused a major incident, did you not, without any investigation, immediately assign all blame to me and try to pressure me into taking the fall for her? The rapid-fire questions hit him like body blows. You and I both know what the truth is, I said, then turned my attention to the grim-faced vice president. Mr. Davis, my voice rose, carrying all the frustration I had suppressed for so long. I'm not here today just to clear my name or complain about one incident. I want to ask this company, where is the boundary for an employee? When I follow procedure and take approved time off, do I not have the right to rest without being harassed? When I properly hand off my work, am I still responsible for a colleague's laziness and incompetence? Is it acceptable for a manager to show blatant favoritism, shift blame, and protect one employee at the expense of another? The company pays me for 8 hours of my day. Does that mean it has bought all 24 hours of my life? Does it mean I must be perpetually on call to clean up after my coworkers' mistakes and serve as a scapegoat for my manager's internal politics? I'm paid to do a job. I am not paid to sell my integrity or my personal time. I finished, my chest heaving. The room was utterly silent. Everyone, including Mr. Davis, was stunned. He looked at me, his expression no longer just curious, but sharp, analytical. Mark looked like a ghost, his lips trembling, unable to utter a single word. Jessica was crying again, but this time, no one was looking at her. After a few tense seconds, Mr. Davis spoke, his voice quiet but heavy with authority. Mark, is what he's saying true? Mark stammered, sweat pouring down his face. Sir, there's been a misunderstanding. I want the truth, Mr. Davis said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Mark slumped in his chair, utterly defeated. The outcome was no longer in question. Mr. Davis didn't make a decision on the spot. He dismissed the meeting with a grim face, asking only Mark to stay behind. The next few days at the office were strangely quiet. The gossip mill, however, was running at full tilt. Rumors flew that Mark was about to be fired, that Jessica had already quit, and even that I was in line for a promotion. I ignored it all. A promotion? Not a chance. The person who flips the table, even when they're right, is never the person management wants to reward. I went about my days as usual. My workload eased up a bit. At least no one was trying to dump their garbage projects on me anymore. Jessica took an extended leave of absence and was never seen again. Her little clique of friends now actively avoided me, practically walking into walls to not cross my path. Mark was still around, but he looked like a ghost. He'd flinch if he saw me in the hallway, his eyes darting away as he tried to make himself small. In meetings, his voice was barely a whisper. He'd assign tasks timidly, almost pleadingly. It was pathetic. I used to see him as this powerful figure who held my career in his hands. Now he just looked ridiculous. A week later, the official HR memo came out. Mark was being reassigned to a position in the logistics department, overseeing asset management. It was a classic corporate exile, a dead-end job until retirement. Jessica had resigned for personal reasons. Our team would be reporting directly to Mr. Davis for the foreseeable future. The day the memo was released, a hush fell over the office. No one talked about it openly, but everyone was communicating with their eyes. A toxic balance had been shattered. No one dared to treat me like a gopher anymore, but no one was slapping me on the back, either. I had become something different, an anomaly. The guy who poked the hornet's nest and somehow came out unscathed, holding the nest in his hands. It was a bit isolating, but it was peaceful. One evening, Dave waited until everyone else had left. He walked over to my desk and said quietly, "Good riddance." Just 2 words. Then he clapped me on the shoulder and walked away. I knew he was talking about Jessica and Mark. I smiled to myself. Did I win? It felt like a victory, but not a total one. My salary hadn't changed. My title was the same. The only difference was that the people who made my life hell were gone. But that feeling of constant tension of always being on guard had faded. When 5 o'clock hit, I could shut down my computer and leave. My phone was no longer a bomb. I was waiting to go off. On weekends, I could actually make plans with friends without worrying that a single call would yank me back to the office to fix someone else's PowerPoint. That feeling, the ability to just breathe, was incredible. One day, the owner of a client company I'd worked with before called me out of the blue. After a bit of small talk, he laughed and said, "Alex, I hear you've been making some waves over there." I was taken aback. "Mr. Lewis, where did you hear that?" "Come on, it's a small industry. Word gets around," he said warmly. "So what do you say? Are you interested in a change of scenery? I'm looking for a project manager who can get things done and isn't afraid to stand their ground." I held the phone, thinking for a moment. An opportunity. A new job would likely mean more money, more responsibility. "But, Mr. Lewis, I really appreciate the offer," I said, letting out a breath. "But I think I'm going to stay put for now." "Oh," he sounded surprised. "I thought you'd be dying to get out of there now that the dust has settled. You think Davis is going to manage you guys forever." "It's not about who the manager is," I tried to explain. I just finished making this place livable. I want to see what I can build now on my own terms." He was quiet for a second, then burst out laughing. "All right, kid. I respect that. The offer stands. If you ever change your mind, you know who to call." "Thank you, Mr. Lewis." After hanging up, I looked out the window. I knew there was no perfect company. Every office has its politics, its problems. But here I had just clawed out a little bit of territory for myself, and maybe for people like Dave, too. I wanted to see if the light coming through that crack could make the place even a little bit better. Even if I couldn't change anything in the long run, at least I had tried. The clock struck 5, and I shut down my computer, grabbing my bag. My phone buzzed. It was a WhatsApp notification. My gut clenched for a split second, a ghost of old habits, then immediately relaxed. It was from Leo. He'd sent a few pictures of his new baby, a chubby little thing with a huge, gummy smile. A voice note followed. Alex, when are you coming back for a visit? You better be here for the baby's christening. I smiled and typed back. Wouldn't miss it for the world. After sending the message, I put my phone on silent and slid it into my pocket. I walked out of the office and into the evening air. I didn't rush to catch the train. I just walked, enjoying the quiet moment. In my pocket, my phone was silent. And that silence was something I had earned. It was worth everything.